like to introduce our first speaker today. The National Roofing Contractors Association continues to be the leading voice and advocate to help advance the roofing industry, whether it's helping roof contractors navigate economic uncertainty, material shortages, to training, to workforce development. The NRCA continues to be at the forefront of the issues driving the roofing industry forward. Best of Success invites their CEO to brief us on the latest initiatives and programs, and it truly is an honor to welcome McKay Daniels to the stage. McKay Daniels.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. For the thing that I always am impressed with coming to these events is how the roofing industry can go so hard at night and then show up at the crack of dawn, ready to rock and roll again, do it all over. It's pretty remarkable. Thanks, Jill, for the warm introduction. Can we give one more round of applause for Jill, Art, Cecilia, Liz, the entire team? This is a 5-ring circus that they put on, usually 6-ring circus, I don't know, each and every year, and it just goes without a hitch and as seamless as can be. So hats off to the entire BMP team. In this past year and a half that I've been in this role, I've been fortunate enough to travel all across the country and visit with contractors at events like this, visit shops, and time after time after time, the number one issue that pops up in discussions is workforce. Second most common issue, workforce. Same with third. But the fascinating thing is, whether visiting a shop and seeing how they run their business, how they place bids, how they do their sales, it's such a unique industry, and each and every shop is different. And you can go, and while the macro issue out there is workforce, you can have a conversation. Just yesterday, had a conversation with a contractor here at lunch, conversation with a contractor at dinner. They said, there is no workforce issue. I can find any worker that I need, anytime. It's not an issue. And then others, it's their fundamental existential crisis that's going on. And so I was going to pull these threads a little bit here with you this morning and kick things off by asking you to take out your phones and do this survey. It's perhaps a slightly taboo subject to ask, but I think for the benefit of all of us here, it would be fascinating to know the answer of just how much of your work that you do with your company is done by subcontract crews. All of it, most of it, some of it, none of it. And if you take a minute and answer honestly, it's all anonymous. You've been doing this, you did this for a couple of sessions yesterday, and I think the results will be pretty insightful, and it can kind of guide our conversation for the rest of this morning. So it's bouncing around a bit, but 45% of the audience here, give or take, we'll round it up to 50. 50% of the audience here is 75 or more of subcontract work. 13% self-performs everything, and then a mix in between. So depending on who you ask, the workforce question can go off in a myriad of pathways and directions. Thanks for taking the time to do this. This is a pretty good sample. You've got commercial, residential, geographic distribution. This is a pretty good sample and insightful for the industry, so thanks. Now, depending on where you sit, depends on where you call it the lens factor, I think. Depending on where you sit, changes your perspective on everything. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what NRCA is working on for those that have in-house self-performing crews. And we're going to talk a little bit about some subcontract labor items that are out there and ways that we can help try to improve the contractor experience. So if you're self-performing your work and you're out there trying to get workers, there's not just a battle for jobs now. It's putting on the roof is almost easy but finding a crew to do the job, if you're self-performing, can be a very difficult task. So trying to get somebody to show up at your door. Once they do come and knock on your door, How do you get them onboarded and part of the team effectively and quickly? Then how do you train them up? All right, they've made it through their first 30 days, 60 days or so. How do you get them on that 6-month, 9-month, and going forward pathway? And then how do you keep them? Because if there's nothing more frustrating, it's having somebody who you've spent all of that care and love and feeding and time with and have them walk out the door for another opportunity. So let's dive into those a little bit and how NRCA has developed some programs to help. None of these are a silver bullet, but they are a resource that you can use in your own way. That's another fascinating thing with a number of these things, is how contractors have taken them and adapted them, tweaked them, modified them a little bit to fit your unique culture, your unique issues and circumstances, which is a beautiful thing about this industry. So, career and technical education. This admittedly is something that we collectively and at the NRCA have fallen flat on in recent years. We've been negligent and derelict in our duty of trying to make it so that a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old out there is considering a career in roofing. We've been playing catch-up these past few years, and I think we've done a tremendous job not just building things internally, but partnering with existing enterprises and organizations so that we can go faster than otherwise we would be able to. Working with NCCER, working with ABC, we got Tony Radar, Steve Little here, who have been passionate about apprenticeship programs to bring people, give them the skills so that they can have a fundamental foundation in the industry and show up ready to work at your shop. Now, other organizations, other industries have been doing this for decades. Well, I could spend an entire hour talking about career and technical education specifically, but I'm just going to pick on one single narrow thread to highlight it. There's an organization called Skills USA. They partner with over 1,000 teachers across the country. Think of that, 1,000 high school, technical college classrooms out there that are teaching the trades, carpentry, electricians, masonry, you name it. Roofing has been absent in that space. Each year there's a competition held in Atlanta, and it is not just the trades, but all sorts of anything that you can do with your hands. If a 4-year college, getting a BA degree in BS isn't your thing, this is a space for those that want to do something else. And for those of you that have been to IRE, Jill asked the question last night at the reception. Imagine 3 IREs worth of square footage with teenagers from across the country doing what they're excited about. We're talking about kids these days, and they don't want to work, and nobody wants to show up. These kids are showing up, and there is a competition for their time. And we need to be part of that effort, part of that engagement, and we are playing catch up. And to put it in stark terms, this is what was at one of the booths for a kid that goes and does a 1.5 years of culinary school. The U.S. Coast Guard, now granted they're playing with federal money, and that's, you might as well be monopoly money, but they're doing $50,000 sign-up bonuses to come and cook on a ship. We can compete with that because not everybody, maybe you get seasick, maybe you don't want to be in a cramped quarters. So it's not for everybody, but this is just to kind of paint the picture of what we in the industry are up against, trying to recruit talent for folks that self-perform their work. We can do it though, and we're making good strides. I'd encourage you, if this is something that you'd be interested in, because my ultimate goal is at this event, there's tens of thousands of kids, but there's also thousands of teachers that come. And my objective, NRCA's objective, is try to match a willing teacher with a willing contractor at schools across the country so that you're able to go in for a couple of evenings, couple of days, a semester, and talk to these kids and demonstrate with them hands-on, here's a welder, here's this, here's that, to give them a taste and a little bit of experience in what roofing has to offer. The contractors that are doing that, it's a long game, but the contractors that are doing that get 2 to 3 able-bodied, willing, more than just fog and mirror folks showing up each and every semester as a result. All it takes is going out and talking to them, just like you do your customers to close a job. We need to go out and talk to these kids to close the sale as well. All right, so we got somebody that comes and knocks on your door, says, hey, I want to work. Maybe they came from a referral, maybe they don't know anything about the industry. This next element is called Track, which is an online, it's onboarding, but it's 101. It's roofing 101, and it's system specific. And it's to be able to take folks who know nothing and get them up to speed more quickly. We've got it in all sorts of systems. It's very cost affordable. It's $200, $300 depending on the module, and you're able to use it unlimited. You buy it one time, you can use it for your entire team. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. Actually, I saw Chris Navarro here from our team earlier. He doesn't know I'm going to do this, so I apologize if you're in here. But poke out and snag Chris after this. If you're an NRCA member, tell him that McKay just said you can have one for free, and sign up. Happy to. Hey, Doug's not here, Lisa's not here. I'm able to call audibles. So, but I'd love for you to try it out. Again, it's you can pick your module, unlimited use, just to see that those that have used it are using it in totally unique and unexpected ways. They're using it for their sales team to give them a better understanding of what they're talking about, and the folks answering the phones and so forth. Next up, all right, so you got somebody that made it past the first 60 days or so. How do you take them and get them in that long-term path? We found that training and those teaching somebody to teach is a unique skill in and of itself. And so NRCA's got a qualified trainer program to go and take somebody on your team and get them schooled up in here's how you mentor somebody, here's how you bring them along and show them, hey, you can do X, Y, and Z. You can do this, and work with them over a long period of time. It's not roofing specific, it's just teaching somebody how to teach. And you could have an exceptional foreman, an exceptional lead man, exceptional project manager, but they may not be the best coach. It's a different skill set. And so working with your team to get those skills as part of your company culture is vitally important and able to keep somebody. And then lastly is certification. And one thing that we've found is for folks here, this really matters. 90%, I saw a recent study by, I think it was McKinsey, kids these days, which is a great way to begin a sentence, kids these days respond to a career path, respond to that certification. 90% of people at this stage of their career are more likely to choose an industry, to choose a profession, to choose a field if there is some path, some credential, some element at the end that designates them as knowing what the heck they know, something that sets them apart from the general public and says, hey, I'm a professional. I know what I know, and somebody else has validated and proven that I know what I know. And the certification may not be appropriate for those guys that have been on your teams for the past 20 or 30 years because you know what they know what they know, but as a career path mechanism, it is vitally important because no 16-year-old starting out here wants to accept in life that what I'm doing today is what I'm going to be doing forever. You have to be able to demonstrate that I, as a business owner, as an employer, value you. We are partners in this, and I will work with you through your career path to get you to where you want to go. And maybe it's beyond installation expertise. Maybe it's, I want to be in estimating, I want to be in sales, I want to grow into being a foreman, a leadman, a superintendent. Maybe they want to own their own company at some point. Being able to work with those people to help them on their career path is good for the employee and good for your business. So that's the bit if you're self-performing your work. Now what about the folks there, the 50% who are largely subbing out their work these days? When I talk to folks, the single biggest factor and reason that people cite for that, anybody want to shout, why do you sub work? It's largely because that's how you can find people, or the only way, or one of the only ways that you can find people. But there's always, in the conversations, there's always some other secondary reason. Cost, maybe it's risk mitigation, cost mitigation, just reducing the liability, whether health and safety, exposure on your labor costs are now fixed. You can budget and plan. There's certainty involved. So there's always, it's availability and something else is often the case for the pros for why folks go and sub their work. Now, in talking to folks, and this is something that's relatively new as subcontracting continues to increase its market share within the industry, is some of the downsides of subbing work. And Tupac went through a number of them in quite excellent detail yesterday. I'm not going to do as deep of a dive because he covered it yesterday, and the slides will be going out, it sounds like, so that'll be great. But in talking to manufacturers, I was just talking to the technical director for a large manufacturer about a month ago, and we were having a conversation about the use of subs in their space. And he said, if the crews are permanent, well-known, regular crews, XYZ crew is working with Daniels Roofing week in and week out. We know them and they're showing up regularly. They notice at the technical side, at the installation side, very little difference. Quality is the same. He said, if it's a random crew, and if it's just one of these, I think somebody said it yesterday, we're all getting a call a week from a private equity firm, and we're all getting a call or two a week or an email a week from a sub crew willing to work. If it's one of these more random, we're going to take them for a test drive or put a random crew on this random job, they have noticed quality issues there, so much so that they're taking note of it at the beginning of the job, that this is a new crew, same contractor that we work with all the time, but a new crew. We're going to pay a little more close attention on this job because there's a higher likelihood that things could go south. So training and quality is starting to bubble up in some issues out there. It's also demonstrated through this result of talking to contractors. This was a survey done to contractors asking, hey, of all the issues out there, what's the ones that you feel is the biggest impact on health and safety for your folks? You come and notice here, 83% of those surveyed, inexperienced labor and workforce shortage. 27% here, poor subcontractor safety performance. And if you think about it, Daniels Roofing, when I had my employees on a rain day, I'd work with them or do a toolbox talk or a safety stand down. I'd go, and it's in my interest, it's part of my charge as being their employer of training them up and teaching them good practices, safe practices, the proper way to do things. In a subcontractor dynamic, like Tupac touched on yesterday, a lot of that, by law, has to kind of go away. It's you're trusting that they are doing that themselves, that they know how to do the job right, that they know how to do the job safely, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of crews do, some don't. It just depends. And this can play itself out in even more. One of the things that NRCA does is we work with the Department of Labor and a number of alphabet soup organizations within that on safety issues. We've got a team in DC as well as Chicago who works with NIOSH and a number of organizations on looking at data and trying to glean where the issues are and what we can be doing better to make it so that everybody goes home safely at night. And this nugget has bubbled to the surface. And it's one that we should all take seriously. That in construction, if you're 20 people or fewer in your shop, those shops are accounting for 75% of the fatal falls that take place each year. Now, there's some very large contractors here in the room. They say, hey, we've got 150 people, 200 people, 600 people. That doesn't apply to us. We have all sorts of robust protocols in place. The question I would ask is, of those 200, 300, 600, whatever the number, how many of them are actually your employees, or do you just have 10 different small businesses that are working for you? If you're subbing out your work to this subcrew, that subcrew, that subcrew, you've got three companies of 20 people or less working for you. This one may know their stuff cold and be solid. This one may be a little more dodgy. How we navigate that, we're still trying to figure it out. And NRCA is working as well to try to get resources for these individuals and crews in Spanish, accessible for them, so that we can raise the safety bar, raise the installation bar, raise the professionalism of these subcontract workers who might not otherwise be getting any of that education or exposure somewhere else. And you as a contractor are in a tough spot because your hands are somewhat tied. Which brings us back to downside of subcontracting, which is the legal and insurance aspect. Legal, talking about it first. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so you should couch everything I'm about to say in that lens and talk to a lawyer or talk to somebody who did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But as Tupac touched on, I think Trent's talked about it a number of times, subcontract labor is only as good as those agreements and following the law, as well as only as good as you are following the law in that circumstance. It's been hit or miss on enforcement, and the current code, the current statutes, the current rules for determining whether somebody is a subcontractor versus an employee are more relaxed today than they likely are going to be 6 months, 8 months. Craig Breitup's coming to do a DC update afterwards. I don't know if he's talking about this, but currently the Department of Labor has a proposed rule in place out there for public comment. NRCA is working on it and monitoring it along with other organizations in Washington, DC, that meaningfully tightens the definition of what a subcontractor is. Currently, there's 2 big categories that count for a lot of points, we'll call it. The proposed rule is there's 11 different boxes you have to check, and they are all equal weighted. It can have a significant impact in how folks operate fairly soon, and so it's something that you should be aware of and talking to legal counsel about, because it could have a meaningful impact on your operations. I was in Iowa a couple months ago and saw this headline in the local news as I was there. Read the article, followed the case for a while afterwards, and this is happening now. This contractor ended up being fined roughly $70,000. Pretty small shop. I think they were talking about 9 employees is all. It was a relatively small case. But you go and do a search of misclassification. If you just go Google misclassification of employment, the fines, the penalties, et cetera, can go up into the millions. That's not to say that it's not a viable path for you and your businesses. You just have to do it the right way. I was having dinner with a contractor last night, and we were talking a little bit about this. And he said how there have been times with, OSHA comes out or an inspection comes out, and they're using 100% subcontract labor on the roof. Some guys aren't following the laws, following the rules, but the documentation, the policies, the procedures were in place that the liability and the fines and the penalties stopped at that sub level. But if you play too fast and loose or get too close to the sun, if you will, it punches through, and all of a sudden, all of these people are deemed your employees, and things can get very tricky very fast. Another aspect, Tupac touched on it, so is just making sure that those subs have proper insurance. This is Trent dropped a line from Jerry Maguire yesterday in his thing. I'm gonna do one too. This is my help me help you begging moment here. I can get down on my knees and do it Tom Cruise style if it helps. But contractors across the country continue to get burned on the insurance aspect. That I was talking with one just a couple weeks ago. Large metropolitan city, doing a job, high-rise job, roughly 60 floors up. We're talking, 600, 700 feet in the air. They're on the job, something goes south. They then check with the subcontractors, insurance documents and paperwork and whatnot. And it's limited, their insurance coverage is good so long as you're not more than 6 feet off the ground. They're on a high rise. They're taking elevators for 2 minutes to get up to this job, and the insurance doesn't cover it. It is something that is real. Can't just take a sheet of paper as face value. You gotta dive in. Now, as I kind of wrap up, there's 3 things that NRCA is working on now and/or that you should just be aware of for the immediate future. The first one, this is like the least sexy topic out there, which is auto insurance and auto safety. And it may not be something that you're focused on now or is keeping you up at night, but it is worth at a minimum, a couple-minute glance when you get back to the shop and paying attention when your next renewal comes along. And if you've got health and safety folks in your team, talking to them about it as well. Because auto insurance is going through an existential crisis at the moment. NRCA works with a lot of the large national commercial carriers. We get together a couple of times a year to talk about what they're seeing in construction in terms of falls, in terms of safety, in terms of muscle issues. Number 1, 2, and 3 issue for them, auto. Distant fourth is skeletal, muscular, soft tissue stuff. Somebody pulling a shoulder, back injuries, knees, or whatnot. But their number one thing is this. And this chart that you're looking at here is for consumer, all of us in our personal vehicles. The data from the commercial guys is proprietary, but take this and picture that end spike just basically being more vertical, if that's possible. It goes up roughly 30, 35%, just depending on the carrier, in terms of commercial coverage. And it's not bending anytime soon. We're in an industry where the vehicles that you all have in your shops, they're big, they're expensive, they cost more to repair because they're larger on the road. If there is an accident, whatever they run into is going to be more impacted than otherwise would have been a while back. And they cost a lot more now, too. But the biggest item is jury verdicts, as they call them, nuclear verdicts, is what the insurance industry refers to them as. And this is just simply an injury that, whether you're at fault or not, that in the past would have been $300,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but now add a zero to it. That's the level that the insurance industry is dealing with. And we all here are right targets. You've got your corporate logo on the side of that truck, and you've got deep pockets, you're a business, et cetera, you're heavily insured, you're well insured. You might as well have a bullseye on your back, and that's the way that it's been feeling out there more and more. So if you're wanting to both try to keep your own rates low, try to keep the industry safer, NRCA is working on a series of best practices and tips and advice in partnership with the industry based off of data of here's some things that you could be doing to bend that cost curve down a little bit, or at a minimum, just keep it from continuing to go straight up. Another issue that NRCA is tackling as we speak and in the year ahead is mental health resources and trainings. This past year at NRCA, and my background, for those that you aren't aware, I've been in this role for about a year and a half or so, but for the 25 years before that, I was in politics and government. And so my lens is a little different than most. But this past year, 3 contractors have lost, that I know of, and I don't even pretend to know most people, but 3 contractors that I personally know have lost somebody in their shops to suicide. One of whom is a long-standing NRCA member who I personally knew, and picture last night's reception. It was a great evening, wonderful night. You're sitting there, you're having a drink with somebody. Just replay it in your mind. Imagine the happiest person that you were talking to, a person you would never guess, never expect, never think, wouldn't even enter your mind. It's crazy talk. It's completely irrational, wouldn't even think about it. But that person next week is gone. This is happening in our industry. And it's an area that NRCA, again, is late to the game, but we are going to play catch up in a hurry and are doing it as we speak to provide resources, avenues, a space for discussion to start to, again, bend this curve down. The suicide rates amongst men versus females, 4 times higher for men versus females. We are largely a male-dominated industry. We're largely you don't complain, you don't talk, you just do your job, get back to work, suck it up type of mentality. But it is literally killing us. And we're approaching, as an industry, we are doing amazingly well on falls. You talk, like I touched on earlier, talking to the insurance folks that do GNL and workman's comp and stuff. We are doing, there's still a long ways to go, but we are doing a great job of bending that curve down on falls. We're not too far off where we're going to be losing more people to their own hands than to fatalities on the roof if we don't start talking, at least, about this issue. So we're going to be providing resources to members and non-members alike. This isn't an NRCA issue. This is an industry-wide issue. And it's not one of those fun Tuesday topics to talk about, but it's a vitally important one that we start to at least have that conversation and awareness. Because within our industry, we are 3 times higher than the rest of the world in terms of suicide and mental health issues. And if you don't think that it can happen to somebody on your team or somebody that you know, you are absolutely mistaken. Lastly, something just to be aware of for those on the residential side, that another trend that you should be aware of if you're not already seeing it, which is a shift in how homeowners insurance is handling damage to a roof. The single largest check writer for shingles out there in the country isn't any individual contractor, it's the insurance industry. The Jake from State Farms and Allstates and Flows and Geico's and pick your animatronic spokesperson. They're the ones who buy most of the shingles in this country via one means or another. And the costs are getting higher and higher and higher, and they're saying, time out. NRCA and our leadership gets together with their trade associations a couple times a year as well to talk about what they're seeing in terms of storm damage, hail damage, whether by floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, you pick it. And it's been a great couple of years for roofing and a brutal couple of years for insurance. And insurance is starting to, this is the Star Wars thing, the Empire Strikes Back. The Empire is starting to strike back a little bit here. And this is a map of average premium increases for homeowners insurance across the country. And you may say, wait a second, the 30%, the darker the color, the higher the increase. 30% year over year over year isn't necessarily sustainable for the homeowner or the insurer, but the bigger factor too is these colors that are lighter. California at 2 to 3%, that's statutorily capped. And so what you have there is insurers are leaving the market altogether. The state says you can't have market-based rates. Insurance company says we're losing money on we're doing great business, but everybody we sign, we lose another $1,000 a year on. So they're exiting the market. What you're seeing start to play out is somebody gets their new homeowners insurance renewal policy in the mail, and if you're like me, you just see, yeah, that feels about what it was last year, and you send in your check or put it on your credit card or what have you. But the fine print in that is it's now excluding hail damage, wind damage. Pick your exclusion. And it has an impact when a storm does come, Mr. or Mrs. homeowner may not be aware that their policy doesn't cover it. And you as a contractor, if you're doing storm work or in this space, need to be aware of it, because you could very well go, get a job, do a job, expecting to be getting a check from an insurance company, only to find out the insurance company says, no, it's not covered in the policy anymore, and you have a homeowner that's unable to pay, and you're stuck navigating that dynamic. This is something a trend that's likely heading one way, and you just need to be aware of it. I mentioned at the top that for NRCA members, if you see Chris, or you can shoot me a note. Happy to send you a sign up for a track module. If you're not an NRCA member, we can call it a best of success special again, because Doug and Lisa aren't here, and you've got to be present to win, so it serves them right for not being here. If you're not an NRCA member, we'd love for you to join the association and do a best of success discount of $250 or so as well for those that sign up here. I think a large number of you are, which is terrific, because this really is a collective effort. The association goes and puts together, toolkits or resources to help you solve problems. But then there's also this tremendous amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, if you will, on things that shouldn't be on your radar, can't be on your radar. It's something we just have to collectively do, like lobbying in Washington, D.C., or working with OSHA or the IRS or the Department of Labor on XYZ things, working with the Department of Immigration on that dumpster fire that's going on of poor policy. You pick, or working on the codes and standards, the energy codes that go on. I never, prior to coming into the NRCA, I never would have guessed for a moment how much time, effort, debate, discussion goes into the codes and standards issues. We've got a team of 3 technical people who spend the bulk of their time attending conferences just like this in order to determine what the ISO thickness is going to be in different regions around the country, and what the rules are if the parapet wall is too short to account for that additional ISO that's now required. And they do an excellent job to represent the contractors in the industry in this space, because if we collectively, if we, the industry, aren't going to speak on our behalf, who will? If we're not going to fight for our issues, who will? And this is something that I take very, very seriously, and the entire team at NRCA takes very, very seriously in fighting and working for you each and every day, because your job is tough enough already, and you've got enough variables to work on each and every day and new problems to solve, that if we can just take 1 or 2 of those off your plate to make your jobs a little bit easier, to make it so you can be a little bit more successful, so you can keep 1 more employee or get 1 more job, that's what we're trying to do each and every day. And I really appreciate being able to be a part of it and sharing this morning with you. Got a couple of minutes left. Happy to have a question or two. If we've got.
Raise your hands. We have mic runners. If you have a question, if you're shy, you can put it in the app.
But it's also, I know, Kim, a blessing for any showrunner to be slightly ahead. So it's also.
We have a question, in fact.
You spoke briefly about lobbying in D.C. Can you talk about the date for Roofing Day in D.C. and if you guys know the topics you're going to cover?
Great question. Thanks for asking. With the lights, I couldn't see who it was, but appreciate it. Yeah, one of the things that we do, and it truly is an industry-wide event. NRCA kind of takes the lead to organize it and put it together. But we've got about 50% from industry, manufacturers, distribution, et cetera, about 50% contractors. We come to DC and storm the Hill once a year for a day and a half. We have some speakers similar to this, kind of do a Washington update. It is not as boring as it sounds. It is actually, folks that come back with rave reviews about it because the speakers are pretty interesting. You kind of get a behind the scenes look at what's going on. It's coming up this April. I want to say the April 6th, 12th, something like that. It is on NRCA's website. I should know the exact dates off the top of my head, but it's the 2 days, the first 2 weeks of April. We're going to be talking this year about increasing funding for continuing education, career and technical education. Again, I could do a whole hour rant, and that's what it would be. It would be a rant on how the federal government is picking winners and losers in the education space right now. For every $1 that they spend on four-year education, $1 that they spend there, they spend 1 penny on career and technical education. All those thousands of kids that descend on Atlanta each and every year, if you're wanting to do something with your hands, you're cut out. But if you're wanting to, get a BA and BS, they'll cover that. The more frustrating part is that of that $1 versus 1 penny, it's 3 to 1. 1/3 of the population is getting that dollar. 2/3 of the population is getting that penny. And I don't care if you're, a red stater, blue stater, whatever. That's just bad math. And so one of the things that we've been increasingly talking about and are going to do it again this year is that. Hey, four-year education is important. We need to continue funding it. But come on, can we bring a little bit more balance to this? And having the contractor's voice in those conversations really matters. If you think you can't make a difference, if you think that DC is a dumpster fire, you're right on the second part, you're wrong on the first. That having your voice be heard in these conversations is vitally important. Hearing it from me, hearing it from our DC lobbyists is helpful, but a personal connection makes all the difference. And that's prior to this, I was the chief of staff for 2 members of Congress. So I'm not just making it up. It really does matter, and I watch it play out over the years. Well, I really appreciate the time this morning, letting me be with you. And I also appreciate everything that each and every one of you do to make this industry better. The fact that you are here spending time to share best practices. It's not just to get, but you're also here to give. And I find that so inspiring and refreshing. And it truly is unique out there in the world where it's kill or be killed and cutthroat, that we as an industry gather together to, hey, how can we help improve one another's businesses and raise the industry up? So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for letting me be a part of it with you.